We are recording. We are live. We still have a couple more people coming in, but it's great to see everybody's faces. I'm hoping soon we're going to be able to meet in person, but we're looking forward to another great meeting. So we have a wonderful lineup today of 3 local speakers. Sorry, I'm trying to let people in at the same time. Multitasking here. So we've got a great lineup today, a topic that is near and dear and incredibly relevant to all of us in terms of Camano Island and emergency management. So I am going to hand it off to Eric Brooks. So we have Eric Brooks, we have Levon Yengoyan, and Scott Fague here as speakers. So I'm going to ask them if they could each introduce themselves. We're going to start with Eric, then move to Levon, and wrap up with Scott. If you have questions, which we hope you do, if you have questions as you're going through this, just feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that, and then I can ask the questions to each presenter. So without further ado, Eric, you ready to take it on?
I am, yeah. Good morning. So first of all, I appreciate you guys inviting me here today to speak, and I'm honored to be talking with Levon and Scott as well. We work closely together during normal hours as well as during these emergencies and disasters. So as you said, my name is Eric Brooks. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for Island County. We're covering business preparedness since this is the Chamber of Commerce, and that's a very, very broad topic as far as preparedness. And in emergency management, we tend to focus on all hazards. So it's kind of the philosophy: if you're ready for one major disaster, you're likely to be ready for a lot of different disasters, and that's become evident during this pandemic. I think before last year, our focus was always on earthquakes. That's going to be the big and the bad that comes and impacts Camano Island and Island County as a whole, as well as the Pacific Northwest as a whole. As we're going through a lot of the things that happened during the pandemic, we looked at a lot of things that had to do with business preparedness and how to take care of your business. And a lot of stuff is very relevant as far as, with the pandemic as it would be for an earthquake. Maybe not the physical damage, but a lot of the things that you do in order to be prepared. So first and foremost, anytime we talk about preparedness, whether it's for your business or not, the first thing you got to really focus on is your personal protection and personal preparedness. Because you're not going to be ready to keep your business going if your home is not ready and if your family is not ready. So we always stress personal protection, personal preparedness first and foremost. Take care of yourself and your family, and I imagine that Levon and Scott will probably talk a little bit about that. So community preparedness. So we look at this as like a bullseye. So right there in the center is your family. So that's what you start with. You're focusing on your family and yourself, making sure you're prepared. And then you start to branch out a little bit, and you start to think about your neighborhood and your community. And so, community preparedness is extremely important. And the one thing that I've always, I represent all of Island County, and I travel a lot through, both islands and as well as other counties as well. And one of the things that never ceases to impress me is that sense of community on Camano Island, whether you're an individual, whether you're a neighborhood, or whether you're a business. The one thing one strength that Camano Island has is its community and its sense of community, and how everybody steps up and helps each other. And in a disaster or even a small emergency, that's probably the biggest thing that's going to help save people is that sense of community and sticking together. And there's all kinds of partners that we have. Community preparedness and individual preparedness is really based on partnerships. And like we said, we have wonderful partnerships with Camano Island Fire Rescue, as well as our law enforcement agency, Island County Sheriff's Department there. But then it's the businesses. I know a lot of you that I see the names on there that I've worked with or given presentations to or visited, and probably eaten at a lot of your restaurants or shopped at some of your stores there. So Also Island Transit. I think I see Todd Morrow on there as well. And Todd and I were working at a clinic on Whidbey Island the other day as far as giving vaccines out. So I've always really appreciated that partnership as well. And then we got loads of service organizations around Camano Island, and we call them COADs and VOADs. So we got community organizations active in disasters, as well as volunteer organizations active in disaster. One of the most prominent ones you have that really ties a lot of these organizations together is the Camano Preparedness Group, which is an outstanding group. And I know there's a couple people on this presentation that are part of that Camano Preparedness Group. And that's a great way to share information and to help others in the community too. And then we have just a whole myriad. I mean, I can go on and on the entire list of different organizations that are part of the community, but it's really important that you develop those partnerships and develop those relationships early on, which Camano has prior to the disaster, because it gets harder and harder once you have that big shake or once you have that pandemic going. So developing those relationships early is going to really pay a lot of dividends later on. So I'm going to focus on the business side of it, and then certainly you have a lot of time for questions, and I'll answer. Sorry about that. I forgot I had my phone ringer on here. And then we can answer questions about other things that come up. Like I say, it's a very broad topic, and a lot of people have different focuses that they want to concentrate on. But as far as business preparedness, planning and preparedness, these are the steps on building your planning and preparedness for your business. Really what you want to do is you want to determine what the hazards are threatening your business. You want to do a risk and vulnerability assessment, do your impact analysis, as well as your continuity plan. Insurance coverage is extremely important, and not just getting insurance, but making sure that it's consistent throughout. Review it yearly. And then you want to make sure that you have those vital records, because if something shakes or your building is damaged, you want to make sure that you have those vital records that you can utilize and get access to. And then, having a plan is wonderful, but you certainly want to be able to test those plans periodically, whether it's evacuation or shelter in place or anything like that. So the first thing is what hazards actually threaten Island County. We just recently finished our multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. Camano Fire Rescue was part of that, as well as all the different jurisdictions on Whidbey Island. These are the threats that we identified as the most prevalent in Island County. Some of these are obviously a little bit more serious than others. Earthquake was always the first one that came to mind before the pandemic. Now people kind of wonder, why are we worried about an earthquake? Landslides, flooding, things like that. Severe weather. We just went through some cold weather and some snow. Wasn't nearly as bad as a couple years ago, but it certainly can be. A lot of businesses were shut down during that time. Then, of course, we have tsunamis. You wouldn't think volcanoes, but especially Camano Island being as close as you are to some of the active volcanoes, and a lot of people work in those areas as well. Volcanoes and wildfires are a threat to us. This year's hazard mitigation plan does not include man-made hazards. That was a recommendation of the state. That's addressed in other type of planning documents, but that's certainly something we realize now that we have to take seriously, and have to make plans in order to address those. So the first thing is your risk and vulnerability assessment. It's important just to kind of take a step back and analyze what exactly can happen to your business. There's a lot of different hazards that you have to consider. And it's not just those individual hazards that we addressed in the previous slide, but how big is big and how bad is bad, and also what are those secondary effects of the incident. So we talk about earthquakes and what exactly can happen in an earthquake, but you got to think of those secondary effects, like your loss of power, your distribution chain. How are you going to get your supplies in? If you're like a retail, are you going to be able to get product to sell? Things like that. There's a lot of different things that you need to consider as far as the risk from hazards. First and foremost, like we always talk about, is life safety. So you want to make sure that you're able to mitigate any injuries and illness to your personnel and family. And then of course you want to protect your building. There are a lot of different benefits of doing different mitigation projects for your building. A lot of times there's insurance discounts and things like that, loans that you can get in order to harden your structure, not just physically, but in order to keep your business running. Some other things that we consider in our mitigation plan are environmental impacts. And then you also want to talk about the relationship with your customers as well as the community. What kind of services do you provide? I know that Island Transit, considers this quite a bit. As far as the pandemic goes, so I know we have some of our pharmacies that are providing vaccines. And one of the things that they're struggling with is the public perception as well. So, how does that impact the community? So you want to look for your vulnerabilities. We talked about a lot of these. So looking at your structure, if you do have an earthquake, if you do have a flood, what are some of the deficiencies in your building structure? Do you need to retrofit some of your buildings? Do you need to improve some of your IT systems, your processes? How do you want to harden those up? How do you want to make those resilient to any kind of damage? Or how do you want to be able to strengthen those so you can bounce back? Retail has gone through a lot of this now since a lot of the regulations that have come down as far as limiting people into your store and even closing that. They had to really change their model and do a different type of delivery models. Restaurants the same way, to do takeout. And then you want to concentrate on your loss prevention programs as well. Then you want to consider the impact. If a disaster did happen, how are you going to deal with the loss in your sales and your income? Are you able to absorb some delays in some of those sales or incomes? And this has been a big one too with the pandemic. It would be the same with any other kind of disaster, is if you do have increased expenses as far as your overtime, your labor, if you have to hire additional personnel, if you have to get additional equipment or consumables in order to keep your business running, are you able to absorb that? When we talk about any kind of regulatory fines, there might be some kind of penalties. How would you handle customer dissatisfaction or a defection? Another thing that you want to really consider with this is the timing and the duration. So a lot of us, when we think of a disaster and think of overcoming disaster and how to compensate for it, we think of more of the short time delays. So this delay might be 2-3 days for a winter storm. We find out with the pandemic now that that the delay that we thought was maybe going to be a couple months is now going on a year now, where we have the regulation. So when you start thinking about your business planning, emergency planning for your business, you got to think, how would you handle it if it's of a longer duration? And also for the timing of that. So we had a lot of festivals when this pandemic first came up. We had a lot of festivals, and it was approaching spring and summer. And that's usually the biggest time for a lot of our tourists to come in here. So one of the examples I can think of is the Mussel Fest, the Arts and Crafts Fair, different things like that, that a small community like Coupeville, they really rely on those. And so the timing of the pandemic couldn't have been worse for them, because they lost a whole lot of revenue from that kind of thing. Camano Island has the same issue with the holidays and everything that came, and they lost a lot of business with that. So something that's really important, not just for businesses, but for really any type of organization, is your business continuity planning. Following an incident that takes out your normal business model, you're going to need resources to recover in order to restore your business. We call it resiliency. Resiliency is kind of almost an overused term at this time. When we first started using it, it was kind of that new and exciting term, and basically it just means, how are you going to bounce back? And it may not necessarily be how you're going to go back to business as normal, but how are you going to be able to continue? And the pandemic has brought a lot of light to that, on how do you continue business when you can't do business as normal. So some businesses have certainly been successful with that. Others have really struggled, and some have even gone out of business because of that. Some of the things you want to think about are your employees. Resources aren't just things, but employees are resources. So with the pandemic, how do you handle when you got employees that can't come in? For earthquakes, it might be because they've lost their home, they've lost a lot of things, and they have to leave the area. In the case of the pandemic, you may have somebody that has some type of autoimmune disease or something where they can't come into work or they can't be exposed to that kind of thing. Then you got to think of the office space, your furniture, your equipment. Technology has been a big one here too. I know with the county business, a lot of the employees had to stay home, and the county still had to maintain its business continuity. So they had to figure out how are we going to quickly be able to switch from working in person to being able to work at home. And a lot of that was building up the IT infrastructure, getting laptops so people could work there, finding different ways of meeting. Hence why we're doing this via Zoom rather than in person here. Other things, production, do you have the machinery, the equipment to handle that? Huge thing, pandemic has really limited some of the supplies of things. That's why we have the picture of the empty shelf up there. But let's think about an earthquake when you have businesses that are trying to run. And one of the things, if we have a major earthquake in Island County, probably even more so than the physical damage is going to be the loss of our supply chain, because the I-5 corridor is very susceptible to damage, and it's going to take months and if not years in order to restore that. And a lot of our stuff comes from off the island. So how are you going to get those raw materials? How are you going to get those goods and services in order to keep businesses running? Utilities, if your natural gas is out, if your water's out, if your sewer is destroyed, we have telephone, internet, things like that. How are you going to function if you can't function as normal? And since all resources, they can't be immediately replaced following a loss, you got to estimate what resources will be needed, not just for the hours afterwards, but days and weeks following some type of incident. We talked about insurance. You want to review your, not only have insurance, but you want to be able to review it yearly. So you want to assess your risk. So you want to think about what kind of accidents, what kind of natural disasters, or even lawsuits could damage your business. And if you need help, one of the sources that we look up is the National Federation of Independent Businesses. And they have some good resources for choosing insurance that's going to help you assess your risks and to figure out what kind of insurance you really need. You want to find a reputable licensed insurance or licensed agent. And that's someone that can help you find the policies that are going to match your particular needs. You definitely shop around. There's a lot of prices and benefits that vary a great deal. So you really should compare your rates, your terms, and what are the benefits of the insurance from several different agencies. And then again, like we said, it's really important that you reassess that every year. Businesses grow, liabilities change. So if you've purchased or replaced any kind of equipment, if you expanded your operations, you need to contact your agent and discuss any kind of changes that may affect your policy. We talk about vital records, and the key phrase, I always think of the double D, and that's the duplication and dispersal. So you want to make sure that you have backups of all of your vital records, anything that you're going to need in order to either prove income or show that you have insurance, show that you have certain documents. And then dispersal, the recommendation that I found was make sure that you're storing it off-site. They say at least 15 miles away. In the case of our earthquake risk, though, having it a little bit further away is probably a good idea, because I know a lot of people that save it on their own personal server, but their own personal server is right there in the next room. It's probably a good idea to have it probably in another state as far as the Pacific Northwest goes, because the entire West Coast would be impacted in the case of our largest risk, which would be a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. If I'm talking too fast, please let me know. Give me a high sign or something. I know we got limited time and I want to save time for questions. And I got up real early and I've had so much coffee right now. So it naturally makes my lips move a little bit faster here. So
you're doing great, Eric.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So I included some additional resources on this, and I'm going to share this presentation with Jessica, and a lot of these resources will also be found on our website as well. I have hyperlinks to all these. Ready.gov is always a good resource. That's the FEMA source for it. Department of Homeland Security has a site called Prepare Your Business for an Emergency. FEMA, again, has earth mitigation for business, which is really good. The Institute for Business and Home Safety. Out of all these, the one I really like, and it's because they put a lot of effort into consolidating a lot of this information, is the Business Recovery Guide. And I don't know if you can see my little cursor here, but that one's right there. And I really like that one. When I speak to other businesses or anybody asks me for any kind of opinion, that's the first thing that I pull up is that. And that's because they not only is it a good and short guide, but it also offers a lot of the additional resources and a lot of the different funding streams that might come down to help support businesses afterwards. And that's things like the FEMA disaster assistant, SBA loans, any kind of tax relief and things like that. So I'll not only send the link to that, but I have a PDF of the Business Recovery Guide because I use it so often. So I'll send that out as well. And then also the other one is our website, and I plug our website only because the website is not necessarily for me. That's for the community. It's for businesses. And so if people find information that they find useful, or if they want pieces of information that they want at their fingertips, we usually put that directly on our website, and we try to make it easy to use. So if you have any kind of recommendations for information that you want included on there, let us know. We try to really stock up that website to make it a community resource. And so did I make my my 15 minutes there?
You are perfectly fine. That was
really perfect. All right. And there's a lot of things that, as far as questions that we can talk about too. Some of the things that we really push is we have our emergency notification system that we utilize. It's called AlertSense, and it's a very robust system that we have. And it's one of those things where you can register your email, your cell phone, your well, nobody has pagers anymore. We can still do pagers, but we can you can register the information on there, and we can send you information, send you alerts. We've used it quite a bit for Camano. I'm trying to think of the last couple times we used it for Camano. We use it for active shooter quite a bit in order to have people do shelter in place or lockdown. We've used it for chlorine gas leaks for tanks and things like that. So, but it's a wonderful tool. And one of the capabilities that we have with that also is something called iPause. And iPause consolidates all the different notification systems that you utilize. So what that means is that if we have a major disaster, regardless of what it is, we can actually ring the cell phones in any area. So we can isolate a geographic area, whether it's a small part of North Camano, and we can ring every single cell phone. That includes people that are coming in that are tourists. That includes people that are registered. You don't have to be registered. It's kind of like that national system where your phone rings and you're wondering, like the Amber Alerts, and you're wondering why it's going off. We can do that with our iPause system, as well as hit any kind of electric signs, websites, goes to radio, goes to TV, goes to, any kind of media. So it's a very powerful tool that we can use in a variety of different ways. So it's called AlertSense. If you want more information of that, we have it on the website, or I can answer you with any kind of questions. So with that.
So there are a couple of questions coming through.
Great.
Could you speak about any planning for the possible downing or damage to one of our county's gateway bridges?
For any of your gateway bridges? So I'm assuming you're talking about the 532 bridge?
That's Todd Morrow, yeah. So, or Deception Pass too, I would guess would be interesting.
Yeah, the Deception Pass. I'm gonna stop sharing so I get a bigger picture of my face here. So, whoa, okay. So, yeah, so we do have our local plans for it. We work a lot with the Department of Transportation and Washington State Department of Transportation. One of our plans that we have is part of a regional plan, and a few years ago they had a grant that came out, and it was called the Regional Catastrophic Planning Team, and that was mainly the bigger counties. So you got your King County, City of Seattle, Spokane, Snohomish, Tacoma, or Pierce County. And we petitioned and made our case to be included in that just because of our geographic situation. So part of that was transportation. And two of the scenarios that we worked on was the 532 bridge going down on Camano Island, as well as Deception Pass Bridge going down. And a lot of it, I mean, it's a very comprehensive plan. A lot of it is redirecting traffic, and a lot of it is the one on Camano talks a lot about using the Army Corps of Engineers in order to span some of those gaps in order to repair the situation. The nice thing about Camano and the 532 bridge is that it's probably one of the most recent bridges to be built in Washington State, and so it meets all of the earthquake specifications. The Deception Pass Bridge, on the other hand, is they don't call it, it's called functionally obsolete, which means it's still in really good shape comparatively, but in the case of a major earthquake, the Deception Pass Bridge is probably going to go down. And so that one is more traffic diversion and utilization of the ferry terminals more extensively. So bringing goods and services onto the island, bringing emergency activity off the island.
Okay, functionally obsolete. I'm glad we're not functionally obsolete. It's a good term.
Yeah.
So what is the sign up for the alerts?
So that's on our website. There's a couple different ways to sign up for the alerts. You can sign up. First of all, you click the link on our website. There is a link on there. I think it's on the first page, as a matter of fact, of our website. And what it'll do is it'll take you to AlertSense, and you just input your information. You input your name, your location, what email address you want it to go to, and you can do multiple email addresses. You can do multiple phone numbers, and so we can choose how, and text as well. So we can choose which means to notify you, and a lot of times it's going to be all the different ways to alert you. But the other way you can do it is through a mobile application, which is really nice because with the mobile app, and it's a red one, so you got to look up, when you look up AlertSense, you got to look up the red app, because what that does is it lets you pick the geographic area. So on my mobile app, I should have shared my phone on here too, because you can see it, but on my mobile app, you can, I have, of course, Camano, everything from Camano to Clinton, Langley, Coopville, Greenbank. So you can actually have your area on there. So any alerts that come in, you will get them on your phone through a notification on the app as well. So there's a lot of different ways to get notified.
Okay. And then Terry was asking for the name of that resource again. Terry, I'm not sure, it was a specific resource. I think she's muted. You're good? Are you good? Okay, she got her question answered.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Eric? We can circle back around, but thank you very much. That was really informative and incredibly helpful. I just had one come back in. With the snow that happened this weekend, many who are scheduled for their second vaccines have been canceled. Because of the second vaccines are time sensitive, are there any plans to mitigate this in the future?
Well, right now the issue with the vaccines isn't necessarily the weather. It's the lack of vaccines being delivered. And Levon can talk about this, because I think he's probably as frustrated, since they're our primary point of contact for running the vaccine clinic on Camano Island. But a lot of organizations, or I should say almost all the organizations in Washington State, are going through that. They were promised I'm trying to put this kind of nice. I guess I really don't want it to be nice, but they were promised a good flow of second doses, and what's happened is they're just not getting that flow of second doses. And I think that's going to be remedied here soon, and we say the dams will be open and we'll start getting more vaccine. But I don't think the weather impacted it as much as vaccine delivery. I think talking to Levon, and Levon can correct me on this, but I think we're hoping to open that back up on Monday. If he gets the vaccines that he's promised.
Specifically to Deanna about her question, it's really, it depends on where you are going for your second dose. They should be reaching out to you to reschedule that dose. I know that, as Eric said, Doses are limited right now for everybody, but there were also some delivery things that happened this week because of the snow. So vaccines did not get to providers on time. So hopefully they will be reaching back out to you to reschedule your specific second vaccination.
Great. Okay, well, that's a great transition over to Levon Yengoyan. So if you want to just introduce yourself, and Levon has a presentation to share as well. So we'll get that running. Yep, we got it.
All right, so thank you everyone, and Jessica, thanks for the invite. My name is Levon. I'm the fire chief here on Camano Island, and I think Eric did a great job of covering so much around the disaster preparedness piece. Our role is really more in disaster response, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Island County has the responsibility for the preparedness side, but I also thought it's important to say that we also approach this, while we're a government agency, we endeavor to take all the steps that Eric outlined in terms of wanting to make sure that we can stay up and running in the event of a disaster. We upgraded all of our facilities about 10 years ago so that they meet current seismic standards so that they're still standing in the event of an earthquake. We do worry about our records retention. We store it offsite as well as in the cloud. We review our insurance every year. We do stockpile water and food for the firefighters that live at the stations for 24 hours at a time. We have backups for all of our positions so that if something happens to our payroll person or our medical services officer, we have other people that can step in. So again, listening to his presentation was a great reminder for me about the steps that we've taken and the need to, go back and refresh some of those things and make sure that those are all up to speed, because as we all know, we never know when something like that may happen. Bear with me one second. There we go. Okay, so I want to just start by covering quickly just the services that we provide, because again, that's primarily what our role is on the response side of the disaster. Everyone knows that we do emergency medical services. That's about 70% of our work. We do fire suppression. Those are the obvious things that people think of when they think about their fire department. What you may not know is that we do a lot of rope rescue. There's a lot of bluffs on the island. We have a very highly qualified technical rope rescue team. We respond to a number of calls every year. We do a lot of marine rescue. Makes sense, right? We're an island. Not only are we surrounded by water, but we really have shared jurisdiction over water with a lot of the fire departments from all the different parts of Whidbey Island, as well as over in Snohomish County. So marine rescue is, in my mind, one of the most important services that we provide. We do quite a bit of fire prevention and public education, CPR training, ACT training. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We do have a program with our high school cadets. We have a community paramedic. And the purpose of this talk, emergency preparedness and response. So we'll talk more about that. How do we do that? The main thing that I want to focus on are the operational personnel that we have. 42 firefighters, combination of paramedics and EMTs that are on staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We also have a volunteer force of that's about 10 right now, where we're always looking to increase the number of volunteers. And I think what's important when you look at our organization is that those firefighters are organized into 3 shifts, and those shifts each work 48 hours on and then 96 hours off. So at any point in time, we have one of our shifts on. And the reason that's important is because while sometimes it seems like we're a large department with 42 firefighters, at any given day, we only have between maybe 9 and 12 or 13 that are on that day. So if a disaster happens, that is likely going to be the amount of firefighters that we have to respond with in the event of an emergency or in the event of a disaster of some type. We operate out of 4 stations, serving 16 to 20,000 people, and we are an island. I know people always laugh, well, it's obvious that we're an island, but sometimes people don't think about the ramifications of what that means, both in terms of our day-to-day response, and the long travel times to get to the south end if our units are out of service and we're getting help from Snohomish County Fire Departments, but also in terms of in the event of a disaster. And the question that Todd had about the bridges is one we think about a lot. What happens if we are geographically isolated? Are we prepared to deal with that as an organization? Are we prepared to deal with that as a community? We're fortunate that I think about half of our firefighters actually live on Camano Island. So we have that ability to bring them back in the case of a disaster. But those that are off island, it becomes obviously more challenging should something happen to the Mark Clark Bridge that connects us to the mainland. I want to talk some about emergency preparedness, and I know Milt is on the call, as well as I think some other people for Camano Preparedness Group. And I'm just going to be really upfront to say that I am shamelessly stealing a lot of information that Camano Preparedness Group was kind enough to send me. But in addition, I'm going to shamelessly plug what they do as an organization. I cannot say enough for the group that both runs CPG and the members that are involved. I would say that, you know, one of the best things that you can do to be prepared for an emergency on Camano Island is join and get involved with the Camano Preparedness Group. We work really closely with them, as does Eric. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the programs that they run, because again, our goal is response. They are there to help everybody be prepared. So again, thanks to CPG for some of the information that is here. And in fact, this is their definition that I took from one of their presentations. An emergency is what we deal with every day. Something happens, somebody's sick, there's a car accident, they call 911, and we, the fire department, respond. That's every day that happens. A disaster, though, I think is really important, and people understand that it's different, that the communications are going to be often overwhelmed. You may or may not be able to get in touch with 911. Power may be out, phone lines may be out. Again, we have maybe 10 people on duty in any given day. It's highly likely that we are going to be overwhelmed if we have multiple houses that have collapsed, if we have fires that are going in multiple areas, or tens, hundreds, however many people injured. Our resources are quickly overwhelmed. We talked just a little bit about isolation. Again, it's a very real thing, and we all think about the bridge going down and being isolated from the mainland, but really it's very easy for us to just isolate certain communities. I know in some of our windstorms, we've had the entire south end of the island, south of Elder Bay store, that was cut off by a couple of big trees that were down. The windstorm that we had a few weeks ago cut off certain parts of the island or made access really difficult, where we had to drive around to different areas. So again, we're not talking about emergency response, we're talking about disaster response. So what can you do, again, as a business? I think Eric did a great job of talking about what the businesses can do to be prepared and have that resilience to survive whatever disaster it is. So I'm really gearing this towards more about what the people can do as individuals. It's easy to say be prepared, but none of us, well, maybe not none of us, but sometimes it's hard to know exactly what that means. So in my mind, it comes down to three things. Be prepared to help yourself in the case of an emergency, be prepared to help your neighbors, and be prepared to help your community. As I mentioned, this is Dean Spearbecker, our community paramedic. We do a lot of training that's out there. The ACT training is a new program that he started about a year and a half ago. It's a condensed class that teaches people just some of the basics of the life-saving skills that they may be required to perform, maybe just in a disaster or maybe just day to day. How to provide Narcan for somebody that's having a drug overdose, how to do hands-only CPR and keep somebody alive if they're in cardiac arrest, and how to apply a tourniquet and stop major bleeding. We have had to put that class on hold due to COVID, but once we get up and running again, it's a great class that teaches you the basics. And this goes back to, again, just being prepared as individuals. It may come in handy on any given day, likely going to come in handy in the event of a major disaster. Again, from Camano Preparedness Group, are you prepared on your own? The previous recommendation is that you should be able to have enough resources in your house to survive for up to 72 hours. And I know now they're talking about it could be quite a while before you are able to get help. Certainly for us, again, being a little bit more removed from the mainland, having the bridge, it could be quite a while. We look at what happened with Hurricane Katrina. We look at what is going on currently down in Texas. It's easy to think, oh, I can last for a couple of days, but in truth, it could be quite a while before we get any significant amount of help to the island. What does that look like? A gallon of water per day, a second of gallon of water per day per person for your basic hygiene, stocking up on food, making sure that you have enough to get by for, again, at least 3 days, but preferably longer. Medications are really a big one, and we deal with that both in terms of disaster preparedness, but also just in terms of when we have fires in people's homes that they need to have extra medications or access to their medications. We're all painfully aware that we lost our only pharmacy on the island a few years ago. This is one of those things that people need their medications, and something that we should be thinking about keeping on hand and in stock to last if we weren't able to get refills on a regular basis. Remember your pets. I think that's a great message. I know with COVID going on and everything else, one of the things that we did was we stocked up on dog food for our dogs, and because they're important to all of us and they're part of our families, and we need to take care of them as well. Camano Preparedness has a lot of great information. This is a link to an emergency preparedness guide. Again, if you join up with the group, they have all sorts of information about what you can do personally, kits that you can buy, training that you can get, things that you can do to make yourself better prepared individually for a disaster. So be prepared to help yourself. Next, be prepared to help your neighbors. And this is a program that they do in conjunction with ERIC and emergency management that I just think is really incredible. And for those of you that don't know it, it's called Map Your Neighborhood. And the idea is once we can take care of ourselves at home, how do we take care of those that are around us? How do we know what resources are in our neighborhood? Do I have a couple of doctors that live here, or nurses, or people with medical training? Who's got a generator in their house? Who maybe has a skill set that can help me get a roof over my head in the short term until I can get my home rebuilt? And that's what this program is all about, establishing a lead, mapping pieces in your neighborhood so you know who lives where. Are there certain individuals in need that may be elderly people that live alone that might need some help? And then coming up with a list of, again, knowledge, skills, equipment, supplies that may be in your neighborhood. I really think this is a great approach, getting away from just our individual preparedness to then looking at those around us that we can help immediately. And again, it's this type of stuff that I think will do the most for us, because we're going to be prioritizing the incidents that we respond to based on severity. And we just want to make sure that everybody else can sustain and take care of each other until other help can arrive. They also teach you about kind of what to do in the event of emergency in terms of take care of yourself, protecting yourself, checking on your home, and then getting out and helping the rest of your neighborhood. And the next piece is, how do we do more as a community? This is another program that I just highly recommend people that are interested to get involved with. CPG hosts this in conjunction with ERIC and emergency management. And it's called CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams. You take the class. I couldn't tell you exactly how many hours it is. I'm sure Eric or Milt could jump in and tell you that, but these are the topics that they cover. And again, just a little bit more advanced information for certain members on how they can help in terms of some type of disaster. Communications is always going to be an issue. We have an active amateur radio club. We have facilities at our stations. I know at the new county building, they're working on some facilities there so that in the event of a disaster, if phones go down, if some of our normal communication systems go down, they can come and support us. They can communicate out to the neighborhoods, communicate to other resources, and help us maintain that communication that's really just going to be critical for communicating what our needs are and what the situation is here on Camano Island. You know, Eric hit it right on the head earlier when he talked about what a strong community this is. We've lived here for over 20 years now, and it's one of the things that I love most about living here and about serving this community is that we do these things that we've talked about. We do take care of each other. And I think it's really been highlighted to me in standing up this vaccination clinic. The number of people that have volunteered to come in and help out has just been phenomenal. It's just been incredible turnout. So there's a lot of ways to get involved. I always say we can't do it alone, that we need to be partners in protecting our community. So some of the groups that we've talked about, Medical Reserve Corps, individual training that you can get, to help take care of yourself and take care of your neighbors and take care of our community. And that is all I have. And I would be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
All right, thank you, Levon. Again, really helpful. There was a message that came in. Thank you for all the work that your team has done with the vaccinations on Camano. I think that we owe all of you a huge round of applause for all of the work that's gone into getting vaccinations available on Camano Island. But does anyone have any specific questions for Levon? Just put them in the chat if you do. Otherwise, we're going to say thank you for that and transition to Scott, who might need
Jessica.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting
would you
us.
like to, I love your background. We all want to be there.
Yeah, I tried to lighten the mood a little bit. This is Florence, Italy, the view from across town at Michelangelo Park. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend it, but it gets very hot in the summer. I'll warn you.
We would be there right now if we could. So would you mind introducing yourself to the group?
Sure. My name is Scott Fague. I'm a patrol lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office. I've been here since 2000. And so the Island County Sheriff's Office is comprised into 3 precincts. One is North Whidbey, one is South Whidbey, one is on Camano. Currently, we have 10 deputies assigned to Camano. And when I started here 21 years ago, we had 9 deputies assigned here. So we're one of the lowest staffed agencies in the state on a per capita basis. And that we have to get very creative all the time in order to stretch our resources. And we do a lot of collaboration with our partner agencies in order to do that. Myself and the sergeant that are in the Camano precinct, we both work patrol shifts. We are working supervisors. So we don't fly a desk. We're out there every day responding to calls as well as all the other things. So the good part about that is we get the boots on the ground perspective about how things are going. The bad thing is sometimes we don't have sufficient time to engage in some of the higher level stuff that we wish we could do. But of course, the sheriff and the chief criminal deputy in Coupeville, they do those particular functions at the higher level for the agency. So I want to, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record. I'm going to say some of the same things that Eric has said and Levon has said. First off, I want to plug also the Camano Preparedness Group. They do fantastic outreach in the community, and they are kind of one-stop shopping for a lot of your planning and how to get ready for things. And as we're talking about this, some kind of an emergency disaster, as we speak right now, what's going on, across the country, a variety of things. And Camano is not immune to any of that. My stepsister, who lives outside of Portland right now, they're I think day 5 without power, and they're looking at another 5 days before they can get power. These things will happen. In 2008, December of 2008, I think the south end of Camano was without power for 2 weeks, if not more. The hard thing is, we're at the end of the line of resources of electricity, of the roads, everything else. So in the event of a major incident, in order to get resources to Camano to help these 20,000 people that live here, it's going to take some time to get those roads opened and those bridges checked by the engineers from DOT to make sure they're safe to put heavy vehicles on and things like that. The model of self-preparation, prepare your household, prepare your street, your block, prepare your neighborhood. That model is really important, and I've seen recommendations of you should have 10 days worth of supplies. You should be able to be on your own for 10 days. I think that's probably pretty applicable to Camano due to our geography. We are very subject to the geography. And then that drives the decision, do you bug in or do you bug out? So if you have medical needs and you don't have a generator, but yet you have an oxygen generator because you're on oxygen because of your medical situation, you can't bug in. You probably need to bug out. Can you? Right. So when we look at just strategic planning, there's a bunch of different tools for that. I tend to use the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, strengths of Camano, obviously everybody's talked about the community, work together, neighbors helping neighbors. People live on Camano, people choose to live on Camano because of the community, because they can be neighborly with their neighbors, right? And that neighbors helping neighbors, that generosity, that working together, that happens daily, and it happens in snowstorms or any other type of event that we have here. There's always people that, they get in their 4x4 pickup truck and they go around and they pull vehicles out of the ditch. I love to see that when it happens. So there's all kinds of ways that people help each other. Weaknesses, obviously the geography and the infrastructure. We don't have a lot of infrastructure. We don't have a lot of redundant infrastructure on Camano. We're fairly minimal infrastructure. How many times have you been in the Camano crawl? And if you get one collision somewhere between I-5 and the plaza, that backs up traffic for a long time. If it was a serious injury collision, like a fatality collision, the road might be closed for, hours and hours and hours, right? Let alone an earthquake or something like that. That's obviously a weakness or a challenge on Camano. And that the roads affect everything that we do. There's only so many roads, and they're not going to be able to put any more. So that affects your ability to get help. It affects your ability to get tow trucks. It affects your ability for fire and ambulances to go across, or law enforcement for us to back up Stanwood, or Stanwood to back us up. So it complicates things. Opportunities, obviously, you work together, pre-plan, look at recent and current events that could inspire action, right? So I made a list of some things that have happened, since I've been at this agency. We had the earthquake in 01. I think it was 01. That was fairly minor, but that could have been more. And everyone talks about we're in the ring of fire. We're in the Cascadia subduction zone, so that could happen anytime. Snowstorms and ice storms, those are every year we get some level of that type of an event, some worse than others. And so that's a huge thing. Windstorms, when the wind blows, obviously, we're all used to what happens when that happens. Trees go down, the roads get blocked, power lines come down. It can take a while to get fixed, things like that. Obviously, it can get very dry, so you're looking at fires. Obviously, tsunami is always something that can happen here. And if you look at some of the tsunami models, they're pretty severe in the impacts it would have for Camano. A lot of people think that Whidbey is going to protect Camano, and that's not what's going to happen. That water is going to go around Whidbey both ways, and when it goes to the south around Whidbey, it's going to come up Port Susan and run everything over. And if that happens, it's going to affect 532 in the Clark Bridge as well. So you can look at some of the tsunami modeling on that. Just look for tsunami projection, Camano Island, Google that. Landslides, bluffs come down in Island County. A lot of these roads, when they were built back in the 20s and 30s, these beachfront communities, they weren't built to what we have now for modern standards. And so we have these high bluffs, they're sandstone cliffs, and they get waterlogged and then they start sliding. And we had a fairly major one over on Whidbey in Ledgewood area here a couple of years ago. Obviously, the Oso slide happened, and you saw what happened with that. So when you get a landslide in one of these types of communities, there's usually not another road to get resources down to them. So it complicates things quite extensively. Power outages, small and large. The bridge out are blocked. Everybody thinks about a earthquake, but they don't think about what happened if we had a gasoline tanker truck that jackknifes on the Mark Clark Bridge, and then you get a fire, right? So that's probably in the scheme of possibilities, that's more likely, or you get some kind of major collision on that bridge and some kind of hazmat release. So probably more likely than an earthquake. And you can look at what's happened with those in various areas around the state when it happens, and it could be fairly intensive. So what we don't have, fortunately, we don't have railroads and we don't have pipelines. So that helps us. But if something were to happen, if there was some kind of hazmat release on the Burlington Northern Railroad going through Stanwood, that's going to affect Camano. It's going to affect the ability to get resources to and from Camano. It's going to affect the ability to get to work, things like that. So there can be far-reaching effects if you take the 30,000-foot view. Things that happen in other communities can affect us. For example, when the I-5 bridge for Skagit River went down here a couple of years ago, if you remember that affected people on Camano, even it was up there, right? So there's always things that can have a ripple effect here. But usually what we're finding is for natural things, the weather events I talked about, in particular, we have hills on Camano that are for arterial roads, major roads that are steeper than Stevens or Snoqualmie passes. And if people are going to go over to Leavenworth or Eastern Washington off of Highway 90, how do they prepare their car? Well, then how do they prepare their car for winter driving on Camano? So you got to be doing those things. And we have had people stuck in their cars overnight on Camano in the winter during a snowstorm. So that becomes really problematic. So that self-preparation becomes really important. So we talked about natural disasters, emergencies. There's also man-made ones, and we deal with those every day on a minor level. Assaults, serious injury collisions. We've had a couple of fatality collisions in just the past 2 months here in Camano that stretched our resources quite extensively. We have to prepare for larger things, mass casualty things, rapid mass murder type events that can happen at schools, can happen at churches, happen at businesses. Most of those, actually, if you crunch the numbers, those happen at workplaces. That's the number one place that those things will happen. So if you don't have a handle on your safety plan for that, we have a group called the REACT group, REACTT. I think there's 2 T's in it. So it's comprised of law enforcement officers, and they're based out of Whidbey, but it's not extra people. It's deputies and city officers in the group that we have, that they already do their normal jobs, and this is something on top of it they do. They go to businesses and churches, county offices, anywhere that they're requested to go and speak as to rapid mass murder type incidents, and they apply the run, hide, fight model that's advocated by the federal government. And that's pretty widespread. So if anybody wants to have them come out and brief your business or your organization, you'll go ahead and feel free to reach out to me. My email is Scott F, SCOTTF at islandcountywa.gov, or you can get a hold of me through dispatch, and that's 360-629-2224 for the non-emergency line. So just before I forget to do that, because I don't have a PowerPoint. So when we talk about all those things, obviously there's some things that have been covered really well, but I would advocate 10 days of supplies. That would include, meds. It would include batteries. If it's dark half the time and more so in the winter. So you need to have illumination. You need to have heat. There's a thing called the rule of threes when it comes to survival. You can survive for 3 hours without shelter. You can survive for 3 days without water. You can survive for 3 weeks without food. And that would be for a person in really good condition. If you're medically fragile, or a younger person or older person, something like that, those numbers go down quite a bit. And of course, in extreme temperatures right now, the 3 hours wouldn't hold up, right? So, but that's a basic rule to look at. So what can you do to prepare yourself in your household and in your neighborhood and all that? And Eric and Levon talked about a lot of that already, so I won't try not to be overly redundant here. One of the things that we see a lot when we're out there working a road is closed situation, whether it was a major crime scene or whether it was a serious injury collision or something like that, a lot of people on Camano, they stick to the main roads and they don't know how to get around. They don't know the detours. And the thing is, because of our staffing and because of the road department staffing, it's something that occurs, especially after hours. We can't set up a detour right away. We'll be there. The fire department will be there. We'll do best we can to flag traffic locally, or we may block the road. There's a movement to close the roads until we get the emergencies handled and people off on their way and stuff. That way, public safety people aren't getting run over, because that happens with distressing regularity. So we're very often moving to closing the road now until such time as we have the fire apparatus and the aid cars can depart the scene. We moved that here a couple of years ago at the urging of the fire department, and Levon can talk about that more if he wants, but and it just makes a lot of sense, right? So the point being that if the road is closed for whatever reason and you need to get home or wherever you're going, you need to know the detours on Camano. So it would be good in normal circumstances to familiarize yourself with, how do I get around, right? I know a lot of people, when Cross Island is really bad, or Camano Hill Road is really bad, what they'll do is they'll try to drive around on Sunrise, which also has its own challenges, or they'll drive all around to North Camano. But do a little research and figure out, what are the detours that I could take to get home. But on Camano, there's, depending on where you live, there may not be some great things. So then it comes down to, do you turn around and go home? Do you take a chance of putting in the ditch? Do you bug in? Do you bug out? Right. So there's some things that can be done for pre-planning, is, know your detours. What are some alternate ways you can get home? That comes up quite often. Something else that I want to plug too is, if you call 911 from a cell phone, it's going to go to a tower. It may not go to the closest tower, right? It may not go to a tower in Island County. So there's a number of towers you can see on Camano, but because of geography, that signal from your phone, it may go to a tower in Jefferson County, Skagit County, Snohomish County, King County, Whatcom County. So when you call 911 from that cell phone and it goes to, say, Whatcom County, and you're on Camano, you need to tell them, first off, always, if you could just get out, 4 or 5 words where you are. They need to know, first off, where you are, and then what your name is, and then what you have. Right. And the dispatcher will take you through those steps, but it's really important for you to say where you are. I'm on Camano Island, and that way that dispatcher at that other dispatch center will know, okay, I need to transfer this call to Island County Dispatch so we can get help on the way. So that's really, really important if you call 911 from a cell phone. Just wanted to plug that. If you call 911 from a residential phone, then it shows the physical location of where you're called from. There are some other types of phones, VoIPs and things like that people use at their home, and they work a little bit differently. So it never hurts to say, where you are, and you should, know where you are. And so as you're driving around, just, anywhere you're at, try to give a landmark, so help can find you. We've had people that have driven their cars down the bluffs. We've had people that have driven their cars into gullies, and they don't know where they are. And so if they're still on the phone, we get people close and we have them, okay, can you honk your horn? Lay on that horn and don't let up, and that's sometimes how we find them. But that's really, really important. And it's the GPS capabilities of your cell phone can vary quite widely. We've had times where it was dead right on top of them, and other times when it shows you in the water in the middle of Port Susan Bay. So really important to give your location as best as you can, or proximity to a landmark. What else? So law enforcement, we handle when it comes to emergency stuff, the safety of persons and property, and once that's established, then we look at helping with search and rescue or welfare checks, things like that. And then it comes down to oftentimes to having the roads open to get the resources there. Resource could be a tow truck. Resource could be getting that fire truck or the ambulance through. Resource could be getting some other needed resource. Open the road, keep the road open for that type of thing. We don't have usually civil disorder on Camano, so which is fortunate. So we're not dealing with that. But we want the roads to be open for the movement of people and supplies and things like that, right? So we work with DOT, or we work with Island County Road Department to keep the roads open, get the roads open, all right? And a lot of people don't realize that 532 is a state highway, so we depend on the state to maintain that. The county road crew typically will not maintain that. And it's up to the state. So it's the end of the road, literally, right? So sometimes it can take them a while to get there. So there is that. We have minimal staffing. So we try to have 2 deputies on at a time. There's a lot of times when there's only 1. At shift change or an overlap day, there might be 3, there might be 4 for a short period of time. But if we have say a domestic violence arrest, and that person has to go to jail mandatorily by law, that's a long drive. It's a 3-hour round trip minimum in good weather and good traffic conditions, right? So that means you got 1 deputy working the island, right? And so we can be stretched really thin on our resources. Some of our people live on islands, some of our people don't. So sometimes it's hard to call people out. What else?
Anyone have any questions for Scott at all? I think it's been a great, a little bit of a different perspective of what we're dealing with here on Camano. So if you have any questions, or if Scott, if I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Sure, no.
Then just put them there in the chat. But I really appreciate everybody's time and information. Scott, if you had to choose one thing that a business owner or a Camano Island resident could do right now, what would you say?
For
for
disaster preparation?
Just for either disaster preparation or general safety. I mean, a lot of these business owners also live on Camano.
Right. Well, I think the disaster prep's been pretty well covered, but I made a list of crime prevention stuff that I could go over here with a little time.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we separate crime into pretty much 2 categories: crime against persons and crime against property, right? So person crimes, assaults, typically that type of deal. Property crimes, those are burglaries, those are thefts, things like that. And our on Camano, and because everybody's been staying home because of the COVID, our burglaries are down. Burglars typically don't want to deal with occupied houses or occupied businesses. They want to deal with a place that's unoccupied, right? If the typical burglar methodology that they use, and this is nationwide, it's very successful. They use it because it works. Is somebody will knock on your door, your front door, and if you answer, they will have a story. I'm looking for my friend. You have moss on your roof. I'm a handyman. I'm trying to make some cash. Is that car in your yard for sale? They'll have a cover story. Most people don't think anything of it, and then the person goes away. If you don't answer the front door, they knock louder. If you still don't answer, then they go on around the backside and they look through the windows and they try to say, is somebody home or are they not? If they think nobody's home, then they'll let themselves in. And a lot of people want to live on Camano or in their county, right? We're in a rural county on Camano because of seclusion, right? They want privacy and seclusion, but that's a double-edged sword because that seclusion keeps your neighbors from seeing what's going on at your house. So we don't have a lot of burglaries in neighborhoods. They're usually at houses that have seclusion. So first off, you don't open the door to people you don't know. Keep your doors locked. Not trying to make you paranoid, but a lot of people think, well, I moved here from XYZ city and nothing happens here. No. We have as much meth and heroin and everything else as everywhere else. We have a lot of property crime, right? So you needed to, do some good physical security to prevent these things from happening to you, right? So if somebody's suspicious, go and call it in because oftentimes these people have warrants. If they're a crook, it could be, too, that they're a legit person. Could be that they're the new paper carrier. We have a lot of people delivering for Amazon that they're using their personal cars. But we also have people that take packages off your porch as well, right? So just do some good basic physical security. I recommend you look into a Ring system or Arlo or Nest. You can monitor it from your phone. You want a noisy alarm system because once they know that the gig is up, they don't stick around and clean you out. There's a plethora of systems on available. Take a look into them, talk to friends that have them. They won't work in a power outage situation, but the rest of the time they'll work pretty good for you. If you live down a long secluded driveway, put a gate up and use it. Because a lot of times people have best intentions and they get that alarm system, they put that gate up, they get tired of arming the alarm system when they leave. They get tired of closing and locking that gate, and then that's when the burglar comes. I've had this conversation with people many times, and because they got complacent. So once a year, just from a general crime prevention or fire prevention point of view too, take a camera, and everybody's got a video camera on your phone now. Go around your house and film your house, film your business, film what's there. So that way when the insurance company and you are hassling over what you had there and what it's worth, take pictures of the serial numbers of the TVs and the different things and the conditions of your if you have collectibles or what have you, whereby value is going to become an issue, right? Picture says 1,000 words, right? So once a year you should inventory your house and take that video and put it, somewhere safe, somewhere on the cloud, on a server or something where it would survive that. We've had burglars take DVRs and they'll throw them in the sink and fill it with water to destroy it. So I don't recommend DVRs that are kept on site, or that being your only thing. Thing about DVRs, you can access it, but the burglar can access it too because it's a physical thing, right? It's a box, and it's pretty obvious what it is. So DVR, sure, but have that footage backed up to the cloud. Make sure your lenses are clean. We get very often people who have video of what happened, but it's the lenses on the cameras weren't clean, and so you can't differentiate anything. We have a lot of mailbox theft going on. Yes, it's a federal crime. Will the post office come out and investigate it? No, they will not, because they don't have the resource to do that, right? So the reason that people are doing this is if they hit 100 mailboxes, which doesn't take very long, out of that, they're going to get some birthday card money in cash. They're going to get some personal checks. They're going to get some things that are worth some money. And if they can amass, $50, they can buy heroin. If they got enough money for cigarettes, they can buy a fake prescription pill that has fentanyl in it and get high. So it doesn't take a lot of money to keep your habit going. If you are an addict, that's what they do, is they steal things every day. They're like a shark swimming in the ocean. They got to keep moving to keep oxygen coming into them every day. The addicts are out there stealing things, and that's what they do. We have a lot of mailbox theft. So get yourself a locking mailbox. Talk to the post office and see if they have any requirements as to what they want. But put it up, secure it really well. Do they get broken into? Yes, they do occasionally. But for every locking mailbox that's out there, there's 1,000 that aren't. And so typically, they'll hit those. But we have had locking mailboxes stolen and cracked open. It does happen. But you're trying to do everything you do to make it harder for people to get your stuff. Don't put outgoing mail in your mailbox. Don't raise the flag. I call that the honesty flag, right? The honor system, right? If you put a check in your mailbox, put the flag up, that's going to get stolen. Somebody's going to come along and take that. So put your outgoing mail in the blue box there at the plaza, or go through to Stanwood to the post office there, or take it to LJ store. And they can, we don't have problems with those things. Here's another thing. You need to have your numbers on your mailbox marked really well. And the fire department will tell you this too. In fact, Levon, are you still giving away highly reflective address numbers, or is that something that is in the past?
Yeah, we don't give them away. I think it's just the cost material. It's like $15 or $20. You get the blue signs with the white letters that are reflective. And Scott, that's such a great point. It's so hard for us to find addresses sometimes. That's a huge help for all of us.
Yeah. You need to have your address clearly marked at the road and also on the house, because we need to verify where it's at. And in a CPR situation, typically the deputies are going to be the first ones that can be there, because we're just already out driving around in cars usually. And we can go a little faster than the fire trucks can. So very often we're the first one there. But if we can't find your house, then it adds time to that, right? So time lost is brain lost, right? So mark your house really well. Locking mailbox is good. Outgoing mail, don't put them in your mailbox. Vehicle prowls. We are drowning in vehicle prowls, and this is happening everywhere. So it's not just here. And people don't lock their cars in their driveways, and so you need to lock the car in the driveway. Don't leave anything valuable in it. Don't leave your garage door opener in it. We've had times when the bad guy will get your garage door opener out of your car, and you're sleeping in your house. They'll enter your house with your garage door opener and empty your garage out while you're sleeping. That's happened, right? Don't leave anything valuable in the car. Now you may think, well, only thing I got in my car is, some loose change and some cigarettes. When they hit 100 cars, which they will, right, in one evening, in about an hour's worth of work, right? And if they get $2 or $3 in coins from each of those cars, that's why they do it, okay? Because they can take that and they can go buy a whole bunch of heroin with it. So lock your cars up in the driveway. Don't leave anything valuable in there. Trailheads. If you go to the state park or you go to any of the trailheads, we get a lot of vehicle prowls from those places, and people will leave purses and wallets and all kinds of things in their cars. And that guy comes along and looks through the window, and then they smash your window and take your stuff, right? So that's also a recurring problem. Don't leave anything valuable. If you're going hiking, you don't need a whole lot of stuff with you anyway, right? I mean, you're going to throw your stuff in the backpack, take it with you, but you're not going to leave a lot of stuff in your car. Certainly not. You're going to leave a laptop computer in your car, or you shouldn't, because it'll go away. Let's see. It is good to have a hide key, but not in an obvious place, because if we do need to get into your house, it's better if we don't have to bust your door down. If we have to give you CPR or something like that. And there's been times when we've forced people's doors down to get aid to them, and now they go off to the hospital, and now their house is not able to be secured, right? So we'd much rather do that. So if you guys want to do that, or your business as well, right? Your burglar alarm goes off, and we get there, and there's no sign of forced entry, and we're not going to force entry to check your business, right? So if there is a code, or if there is a key that can be kept in a safe place, that is not obvious, then you can give that information to the code, or where the key is, to dispatch. They can give it to the deputy who's arrived on scene, and then they can enter it and check thoroughly. Because here's an example: you get stay behind burglars, right? You have business. The person who's locking up, 9, 10 p.m., 10 p.m., they're focused on doing the chores, and they're not focused on checking the store for somebody who stays behind. Somebody stays behind, they're inside your store, the employer locks up, they leave, you get a motion alert, sets off the alarm. Not sure why. We show up, and doors are locked, nothing's broken. So we leave, right? We didn't check the inside of the business, because we can't, right? Unless a key holder is going to respond, or there's a key or a code there. Well, now your stay behind burglar cleans you out, and then they go out the door, right? So things like that just nuances, some of it's just not obvious, but it's, our wheelhouse there. So that's mostly it. Scam calls. They're not Microsoft calling you. They're not the IRS calling you. You don't have a warrant. Okay. Just hang up on these people. And they're calling from outside of the US. So there's not a lot we can do. I can't reach out through the phone lines and put the gravis on them, because they're in India, they're in Pakistan, they're in Chechnya, they're all these places. They're going to call you. I've had to call from my own cell phone number, because they'll spoof your number. Hang up on these people. Don't give them the time of day.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Scott. Personally, I have never taken a video of my house, and I always put mail in my mailbox with a flag up. So I've learned 2 things.
Don't do that.
I do lock my doors in my car. Does anyone have any questions for Scott or Eric or Levon that you were thinking of? This was all really, really helpful. And I'm thankful to all of the presenters. I also put in the chat box the contact information for Camano Preparedness Group. So as many of these people suggested, they're a great resource to join. And Eric just put in the text that as an addition, Island County DEM has a preparedness app that will help you make a plan, build your kit, and stay informed. Upgrading it to make it even more powerful and useful. The link is there, and you can search for Island County Emergency Management in your app store. So that's another option. This meeting was recorded, and I'm going to ask Levon and Eric for their presentation. So I will send out the PDFs and the recording of the meeting, so that if anyone wants to resource or access these resources, they're able to. But it's great to see everybody. So thank you again. And if you've got nothing going on, you can always go out and Glass Quest. We've got a couple more days left.
Hey, if I could add just a couple things. I know the risk of tsunami came up, and I just wanted to let you know that we have AHAP sirens, which stands for All Hazards Alert Broadcasting, that are being installed on Camano Island for the tsunami risk, and they're in the most impactful areas based on the latest tsunami modeling. So those should be placed early this year, and that's going to be at Driftwood Shores, Iverson Beach, and Livingston Beach. Also, there's going to be one in Deguala Bay that might be heard from Camano as well. So those are some things to take care of the tsunami modeling. We already talked about the phone app. It's a very powerful app, and we are making a lot of improvements to that. So that should be coming in the coming weeks here. But next month, Washington State is also implementing the shake alert. So that's an advanced warning for earthquakes. It's a very short period of time for warning, especially on something like a Cascadia or a Seattle fault earthquake. But it is something that'll ring off on your phone, and it'll give you a little bit of a heads up. Let you know what the magnitude is, what the location is from the earthquake. So to give you a little heads up so you can drop, cover, and hold.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Lots of great resources. So that we've got a lot of comments coming in saying this was wonderful information, and thank you again for your presentations. So it's great to see everybody. Thanks so much.